hang on. Okay, why don't you explain this bet that you have going on now?
What?
Right. So I only own one
Exposed.
shirt, and you can guess which shirt it is because I'm wearing it. But if I can keep wearing this for the next 2 years,
Oh.
Marat will give me his screaming lemon.
What?
Okay, there we go. Show
I
them.
don't like this trade.
I'm confused. That cleared up nothing.
Drew has been wearing this shirt every single episode, every single recording. I was just waiting for you all to notice.
I noticed.
Oh, we noticed.
I thought
We
it was
noticed.
just like a coincidence the second time.
Yeah.
But now here we are, and it's like
Now here we are.
happening.
I know, that's why I did it, because you're like by the 5th time. Surely.
Come back to Romeo and Juliet.
2 years.
We are still in Act 1. We are in Act 1, Scene 4, watching Romeo and Benvolio, his broio, on their way to the
Romeo.
Capulet's party, which they are crashing. They are also walking with Mercutio, who I don't think we've seen in person yet. He's a lot of fun. And there's just some other people around, so there's just like a whole bunch of people walking on their way to this party. So that is what we are going to see. There's also a boy with a drum. It's not very relevant. Enter Romeo, Mercutio, Benvolio with 5 or 6 other maskers. So people wearing
Romeo,
masks.
right?
It's a masquerade. Torchbearers and a boy with a drum.
Who's gonna be the boy with the drum?
Boy.
All right.
Okay. Okay. What shall this speech be spoke for our excuse, or shall we on without apology?
The date is out of such prolixity. We'll have no Cupid hoodwink for the scarf, bearing a Tartar's painted bow of lath, scarring the ladies like a crow keeper. Nor no without book prologue. What prologue? Prologue? Faintly spoke after the prompter for our entrance. But let them measure us by what they will. We'll measure them, measure and be gone.
Give me a torch. I am not for this ambling. Being but heavy, I will bear the light.
Nay, gentle Romeo, we must have you dance.
Not I, believe me. You have dancing shoes with nimble soles. I have a soul of lead, so stakes me to the ground I cannot move.
You are a lover. Borrow Cupid's wings and soar with them above a common bound.
I am too sore and pierced with his shaft to soar with his light feathers, and so bound I cannot bound a pitch above dull woe. Under love's heavy burden do I sink.
And to sink in it should you burden love, too great oppression for a tender thing.
Is love a tender thing? It is too rough, too rude, too boisterous, and it pricks like thorn.
If love be rough with you, be rough with love. Prick love for pricking, and you beat love down. Give me a case to put my visage in, a visor for a visor. What care I what curious eye doth caught deformities? Here are the beetle brows shall blush for me.
Come, knock and enter, and no sooner in, but every man betake him to his legs.
A torch for me. Let wantons light of heart tickle the senseless rushes with their heels, for I am proverbed with a grandeur phrase. Grandeur phrase. I'll be a candle holder and look on. The game was ne'er so fair, and I am done.
Tut, done's the mouse, the constable's own word. If thou art done, we'll draw thee from the mire. Or, save your reverence, love, wherein thou stickest up to the ears. Come, we burn daylight, ho!
Nay, that's not so.
I mean, sir, in delay we waste our lights, in vain lights by day. Take our good meaning, for our judgment sits 5 times in that air, once in our 5 wits.
And we mean well in going to this mask, but 'tis no wit to go.
Why, may one ask?
I dreamt a dream tonight.
And so did I.
Well, what was yours?
That dreamers often lie.
in bed asleep while they do dream things true.
Oh, then I seen Queen Mab hath been with you. She is the fairy's midwife, and she comes in shape no bigger than an agate stone on the forefinger of an alderman, drawn with a team of little atami over men's noses as they lie asleep. Her wagon spokes made of long spinner's legs, the cover of the wings of grasshoppers, her traces of the smallest spider web, her collars of the moonshine's watery beams, her whip of cricket's bone, the lash of film, her wagoner a small gray-coated gnat, not half so big as a round little worm, pricked from the lazy finger of a maid. Her chariot is an empty hazelnut, made by the joiner squirrel or old grub, time out of mind the fairy's coachmakers. And in this state she gallops night by night through lovers' brains, and then they dream of love, on courtiers' knees that dream on curtsies straight, over lawyers' fingers who straight dream on fees, or ladies' lips who straight on kisses dream, which oft the angry Mab with blisters plagues, because their breasts with sweetmeats tainted are. Sometimes she gallops o'er a courtier's nose, and then dreams he of smelling out a suit. And sometime comes she with a tight pig's tail, tickling a parson's nose as he lies asleep. Then he dreams of another benefice. Sometimes she driveth o'er a soldier's neck, and then dreams he of cutting foreign throats, of breaches, ambuscados, Spanish blades, of healths 5 fathom deep, and then anon drums in his ear, at which he starts and wakes, and, thus being thus frighted, swears a prayer or two and sleeps again. This is that very Mab that plats the manes of horses in the night, and bakes the elfox in foul sluttish hairs, which once untangled much misfortune bodes. This is the hag, when maids lie on their backs, that presses them and learns them first to bear, making them women of good carriage. This is she.
Peace, peace, Mercutio, peace. Thou talkest of nothing.
Oh,
True. I talk of dreams, which are the children of an idle brain, begot of nothing but vain fantasy, which is as thin of substance as the air and more inconstant than the wind, who woos even now the frozen bosom of the north, and, being angered, puffs away from thence, turning aside to the dew-dropping south.
this wind you talk of blows us from ourselves. Supper is done, and we shall come too late.
I fear too early, for my mind misgives some consequence yet hanging in the stars shall bitterly begin his fearful date with this night's revels and expire the term of a despised life closed in my breast by some vile forfeit of untimely death. But he that hath the steerage of my course direct my sail on lusty gentlemen.
Strike drum!
March about the stage and then withdraw to the side. Wonderful job, drum boy.
Oh, he's doing a solo. No drum boy.
Mercutio's like the hell.
This is what Whiplash was inspired from, that final scene.
This is the original Whiplash.
Okay.
Yeah.
So good job. So this scene is quite famous. The speech, the Queen Mab speech, is pretty famous, which is quite funny because, as Darian said, it's kind of about nothing. This whole scene is a little pointless. We don't really learn much that we didn't already know, to be frank. We know that they're going to the party. We know that Romeo is sad about women.
Yeah.
What this scene does is introduce us to Mercutio. That's basically the only point. He gets to have his little moments, and that's it. But there are some cool references that I wanted to tell you about. So we have up at the top, we talk. Bonfolio is talking about the Tartar's painted bow of Lath. So this is a little dig at Christopher Marlowe.
Whoa.
Supposedly, yeah. So he wrote a play called Tamburlaine, which is about the Tartars, which was a group of people. And so like mentioning the Tartars and then a painted bow of Lath, which was just like a really bad material to make bows out of. He's kind of like implying that it was just making fun of him by mentioning this character. But the reason why we're talking about a Tartar hanging onto a bow anyway is because of Romeo saying, shall we make a speech, etc.? Shall we go on without apology? there was a tradition when you went into a costume party back in this day and age that you would make a little speech in character when you entered the party. And Romeo was like, do we have to do that? And Benvolio is like, nah, we're not gonna do that. And then he says down there, let them measure us by what they will. We'll measure them a measure and be gone. Classic Shakespeare nonsense. Let them judge us by how they judge us. Let them judge us. We're not going to have to make a speech. They'll just judge us however. And then we will dance with them for a song and be off. So let's just be casual about this. We don't have to stop the whole party to introduce ourselves. Romeo is like, no, I'll just hold a torch in the corner. Mercutio is like, no, you must dance. Romeo says, absolutely not. Just please dance. You'll have to dance. I can't dance. He mentions that lighter heels will move the senseless rushes. So this I learned. Sometimes in a house, instead of like just a floor or a carpet, they would put like old reeds and hay and stuff. So that's what he's talking about there. People just kicking around the hay as they dance, which is a choice. At one point, Romeo says, I'm done. I'm done. I'm not going to do it. Mercutio says, tut, done's the mouse. This is kind of like a, hey, it's for horses retort, because done also means like a brownish gray color. So it's like, I am done. You're not done. A mouse is done. You're coming to dance. The final little note that I found in my research is that Queen and Mab were both slang for prostitute. So when he invents this Queen Mab fairy person in this big long speech, he's basically, prostitute.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And it starts out quite silly and goofy, kind of just like, oh, like this, ridiculous woman who invents dreams and puts them in our minds, like how silly she is. And she is in a hazelnut and whatever. But he kind of gets carried away in his own delightful words. And by the end of it, he's kind of describing what we would call like a PTSD dream of a soldier dreaming of the drums of war and waking up in a panic and freaking out, And as he's kind of like going off on this tangent about nightmares and dreams, Romeo is just like, hey, relax.
Yeah.
Yeah. We do get the thou talkst of nothing. We talked about the nothing slang in our sonnets a little bit. It was slang for vagina. So, tying back to the prostitute, you talk of nothing. Move on.
Talk of nothing. I imagine just like him going to the audience like, everyone's like, yeah.
And there was a lawyer joke in there too.
Yeah.
Is the what joke?
Oh yeah. Or lawyers' fingers who straight dream on fees.
Yep. Lawyers dreaming of fees.
Those damn lawyers.
Kisses. Damn lawyers.
I was going to say earlier on, I can see this scene being relevant by having a different perspective on love. Like Mercutio is saying, instead of love being a thing, love is what you make of it. If it's sweet, you're sweet. If it's rough, you're rough. And then when we get to the Queen Mab speech, this is totally just Shakespeare showing off. Trying to be like, it's like the scene in a book when a character is really boring and another character goes, this is so boring. And the other character's like, you're right, but I got to keep talking. And I'm like, not clever for you to point it out. It's still boring.
It's still boring.
Yeah.
Actually, pointing it out just kind of makes it worse.
Right.
Yes.
One little nitty language thing I really liked is that the meter of this is like really consistent for the most part. But when it starts getting into the nightmare, specifically, that plates the manes of horses in the night and bakes the elf ox. Right, starting here, it goes from bouncing to just hard syllables like foul, sluttish hairs, which once untangled much misfortune. And it was funny because I was having trouble untangling how to say that sentence. So that to me is another example of Shakespeare, having the word not only say something in the scene, but do the thing in the context of the play itself too, which is what one of the things that I think makes him really good is stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's very like self-referential in a weird way.
And then of course it also interrupts and it's so weird like where it ends. Like this is talking about the hag and maids lying on their backs and then getting impregnated. And I think that's when Romeo's like, Mercutio, bro.
All right. All right.
Yeah,
I don't want to hear about this right now, bro.
Yeah,
I'm brooding.
it's a very weird speech. It's very cool, but very strange. And yeah, like I was looking on, people talk about how strange this is, and yet no one cuts it when they do productions because people like the Queen Mab speech, weird as it is. And it's a good speech and everything, but it's very, you know, it's strange. There was a scene, I did Macbeth in high school, and there's a scene where like the king shows up and like Lady Macbeth is like, "Hi, welcome to the castle, come on in." All right, and like that's the whole scene basically. And
All right.
our director was like, most people cut this scene, but we're not gonna. And I was like, oh no, like we
Why?
don't. It's so
Why don't we cut it?
Yeah.
Like a good idea.
I feel like this scene, if it were not for the Mab speech, would get cut far more often because it is really
This is
just
very
like
cuttable, I think.
more of the same. Yeah.
Even with the Mab speech, it's cuttable, but you know, like, it is entertaining if anything.
I think it's just I think it really helps inform Mercutio's character too, since the word mercurial means somebody who's like unpredictable and you can switch wildly back and forth between their moods. So he starts off poking fun at Romeo, and then all of a sudden, the longer he goes into his speech, the more unhinged he gets.
Yeah, his true desires start to show.
Yeah.
He also later, spoilers, I think he's the one who tries to goad Romeo into a fight or something, or am I remembering that? I'm thinking of the movie with Leonardo DiCaprio when he offers Romeo drugs. And I think it's like, and now I understand why they do that, because they want him to do drugs in the movie and then give this Queen Mab speech.
I guess we'll have to wait until we're done reading and then watch the movie to find out.
You're watching another movie, all right?
Another movie.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Wait, there's a Leonardo DiCaprio version of Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah.
Oh
Yes.
boy, is there.
There is.
It's
It is.
Sounds good. Sounds really good.
I think it's literally the equivalent to Romeo and Juliet as Troy is to the Iliad. So
Yes.
it really is up our alley.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's right up our alley.
We're gonna have a Shakespeare movie day where we just watch a bunch of Shakespeare movies.
I'm with it. What are there, like 2?
What are they?
Yeah, about approximately 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mercutio with his mercurial temper.
Benvolio with his being good.
I don't know if this naming convention would be eye roll inducing nowadays to have your characters' names literally mean the defining aspect of their character. I think a lot of authors still do that. Maybe not. They may or may not be as cleverly hidden, but I think it's a lot harder to figure out how these characters' names are literally their characteristics because the language is so archaic. But I wonder how many people back in the day would be going like, "Oh my god, that's lame. Why'd you call this guy Mercutio?"
I would guess no one, honestly. They love this shit.
Yeah. I guess like calling a villain these days like Dr. Cunning or something. It sounds kind of stupid.
Dr. Evil.
Dr. Adolf.
What?
That's a really good
There
one.
is a fantasy author named Robin Hobb who does lean into this, and it does feel a little old-fashioned reading it, where, you know, the Prince Chivalry is the most chivalrous man you'll ever meet in your life.
I like that,
Not
dude.
that
That's
different
funny.
than Prince Charming, is it?
Yeah, right. But nowadays you can't honestly name a character Prince Charming without it being a joke. People will be like, he's got to not be charming, right? Isn't that the whole
He's
point?
gotta not be charming. Right.
Yeah, I a while back read Pilgrim's Progress, which was like a really influential, really popular like children's story. And it's quite old. But it was like this character, his name is Christian. He was a Christian. And he like meets characters like Charity, who teach him how to, you know, be charitable and like chastity and like people like that, and they all help him along his way to heaven, basically. And then we get the second part of the book where his wife, Christiana,
Oh
and
my
their
god.
children basically do the same thing, and she's like, oh hey, what's your name? And they're like, oh, I'm Charity, I just helped out your husband and here's exactly what we did. Just like repeats the whole thing over again.
That's so rough.
Yeah, but it was like really famous for a long time, and a lot of people like did little pageants of it and such.
I guess I guess there was a time when people really liked their hitting the nail on the head allegorical storytelling.
It was like headbutting a nail while putting it on the
Headbutting.
I don't like that. I don't know that one bit. There are some clever ones. What was it? There was that one book where like there's a kid, his like grandfather's name is Major, his last name is Major. So they name after his grandfather, so he's Major, and he's the oldest brother of the three, so he's Major.
100
years to the army, something like that. I don't remember. Yeah, and he goes to the army, becomes a major. So his name's Major. You know, I like that version of that. He's got like 7 majors by the end of the book. It's like a weird, like
it's Catch-22.
Oh,
is that Catch-22?
It's probably that. Yeah.
Never read
it. I haven't read it.
Oh, Catch-22 is a good book. I recommend it.
Is it?
I've been told.
Yes.
I've always been told like that's a Catch-22. I'm like, haha, I get that.
It's just the whole book is kind of like a large chunk of it is like nonsense. It's just like walking in circles, and then it does. It's you have to read it, but it's good.
Would you say that it affected your emotional development as a teen?
Tremendously, but I read it in college.
Or did you read it to be cool?
I did. I read everything to be cool. I agree this scene could probably be cut. Actually, honestly, this is where I think so they back in the day, like with I'm talking about like Chaucer's day, in books they would include stuff like the author's genealogy, like his family tree, a history of him. Like they didn't just publish books. They're like, this is the one book I'm going to write forever. So I think sometimes you see stuff that belongs better in other work just because Shakespeare didn't want to put it there. Because this feels like a Midsummer Night's Dream speech, this whole like Queen Mab fairy midwife. And instead of just saving it, you know, he's like, maybe he did have a more like stable career compared to most, but maybe he just was like, I'm going to put this in here. And then later he was like, oh, now, though I don't know if Midsummer came before or after, but either way, I feel like he knew this wasn't really fitting. And he was just like, I'll just put it in there anyway. And maybe Mercutio, the actor, can hop around. And maybe true, the actor who was playing Mercutio at this time, Shakespeare knew could do a good job with this. And that's why he like, now, I would guess there has to be some reason like that, besides just he's a bad writer.
Lots of background reasons. When we did the scene in Macbeth that I was talking about, my director said that she thinks that it was probably a scene change because it's at that point that after that scene we are in the castle. So they might have like moved in a set while they were doing this stupid little dialogue in front of the curtains, and then we have the big set. And because they couldn't do like a blackout, you know, so they did like a little scene, and then now we're in the castle that we're going to be in for a long time.
Let's just let Mercutio chew the scenery while we move in the actual scenery.
Yeah. So it could have been that. There's all kinds of different reasons why it could be.
I feel like that would make sense because they are in transition to the party.
That's true.
Yeah. I actually had a question for you guys. What is Romeo talking about exactly? About like the vile forfeit of untimely death? Because I thought he was just saying like, oh boy, like here we go. So I know something's going to happen because I'm the protagonist, but I didn't know what he meant by like a despised life closed in my breasts. And yeah.
It just sounds like he's talking about how much he wants to die because he's brooding.
Yeah, because love, you know, angst.
Yeah.
Foreshadowing, like unfortunate foreshadowing, like some dramatic irony in there. He's like, oh, I'm so hurt. I want to die. Little do you know, Romeo. But the audience would be like, oh, we know you're going to die.
Yeah, I think the hanging in the stars line would point toward that. Like, we know from the prologue, introductory monologue, that they're star-crossed lovers. This is where that phrase comes from. And, you know, Romeo has this, like, premonition almost. He's, like, looking at the stars. He's like, doesn't really like the fate that's written in there. They still did astrology and stuff back then, even more than we do now, you know, right? So It's just like, getting a bad vibe. Maybe it's because Mercutio is spitting all this nonsense, but bad vibe. Yeah, and also he's just depressed. He's depressed this whole scene. You know, he's like, I don't really want to dance. I don't really want to go.
He's like been depressed the whole play so far.
Right.
Yeah. That would be my answer.
Yeah, I think that the reading of the scene could be very different depending on how it's performed. Like, I'm sure it could be performed really ominously, like Romeo's getting a bad feeling about what's going to happen, or it could be
it again, but ominous this time.
The ominous cut.
in your best movie trailer voice. Or it could be played like super innocuous, super inconsequential, where Mercutio's just being weird and Romeo's just still being depressed. I'm not sure which mood would help the dramatic irony be the most effective, though.
Well, I mean,
Because if they're like hanging a lampshade, it's like, yeah, we know they're gonna die. But that's plot clairvoyance we don't need.
I mean, grammatically, Romeo is saying that because you're going to break down the sentence as it's structured, it is some consequence that will begin his fearful date at the party and then expire only after some untimely death. If you strip out a lot of the words, basically saying something bad is going to start tonight and is going to end up with somebody dying.
Oh, it's him.
Oh, it's him.
Spoiler.
Spoiler.
Well, I mean, if we're really diving into spoiler territories, it's Mercutio. Mercutio is going to die as a result of.
That actually spoiled that. I didn't know that. I forgot he died.
Yeah, so the guy he's talking to, where he's like, hey, I don't think we should rush into this party because something bad's going to start and end with somebody dying. He's saying it to the person who's going to die.
Which is not just, to be fair, Romeo being dramatic. They are crashing the Capulet party, which, you know, the prince told us just a couple scenes ago, if you guys start another fight, like, things are going to go down. Like, this is not okay. So they are going into a dangerous place, not just for Romeo's heart, but for his life.
Or we can boil it just down to an image of Ewan McGregor saying, I have a bad feeling about this.
There we go.
That.
Against bad vibes.
I like the Star Wars version of Romeo and Juliet. Sounds something I'd be into.
I think that's just the prequels, actually.
That's just the prequel.
Yeah, Jar Jar Binks is Juliet.
Jar Jar Binks is Juliet.
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
I mean, I really did like Shakespeare's original Sand speech.
Yeah.
The original
Like,
Sand
it's not the same.
Sand speech gets everywhere.
Oh, yeah, it's coarse and rough.
Well, they had to include it because they were changing the scene. They were putting the sand in.
Yeah.
Love getteth everywhere.
Love getteth everywhere.